Okay, we're back in the Word of the Most High. We're in the Apocrypha. We're in First Maccabees, the first chapter. Let's start at verse 49. It says, "To the end they might forget the law." So this is whole diabolical plan that we might forget the law. That's why a lot of Christians, they can't handle the fact you say that we under the law. They somewhat can handle commandments, but when you say, no, you got to follow the Most High's laws, they have a problem with that. You see here, it started in the Greek Empire. Because all the other empires, we knew we were Israelites. This is when we started to phase away from our nationality, our race as being the Israelites. It says, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, this wicked Edomite king, so-called white man king, Antiochus Epiphanes, whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. Put him to death. If you don't what? Like he said. Verse 42. And everyone should leave his laws. See? So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yeah, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion. Like you consented to the religions that they have on this earth right now. In not keeping the Most High's laws and feast days, saying, these are my holy days that you're doing unto this day. He said, whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he should die. Put him to death. That's verse 50. Verse 51. And in the self same manner wrote he to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over all the people, over the seers, over the prophets. That's who we are. That's the holy people of the Most High. They call us seers before they call us prophets. He's over the seers, over the prophets. Or too phenomenal if they call us over the prophets, so they say overseers. And we don't even really realize that you look at this Bible and say, wow. Just like they, let me show you how to go to Isaiah the 30th chapter just to prove that point. Same ones, just called seers before they were called prophets. Isaiah 30 and 10. This is what rebellious Israelites saying. Which say to the seers, see? Which say to the seers, and what it say? Over the seers, right? Overseers, right? Which say to the seers, see not. And to the prophets, see? Prophesy not unto us right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits, tell us lies. And that's what they've been taught from birth, lies in religions and so forth. Because they're not taught the commandments of the Most High. They ain't even talk about the Most High, who he is and what he is about. They even know him, the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He said, it's my name forever and a memorial to all generations, including this generation. They ain't taught that you going to know that he is the Most High from what he does and what he going to continue to do. Until he get a name, he going to be all in all. You turned away from with all these different idols that you're dealing with. But you see what it said? Which say to the seers, since they come with the word overseers, say to the seers, see not. And to the prophets, the same thing as the seers. The prophets are just like the seers, but it would be too much to say they over the prophets. That would let us know, wow, we the prophets? The prophets in the Old Testament, let me read this. Start reading and realize it's us? Oh no. See, overseers, until this day, a lot of you probably didn't realize this. Hopefully you see it though. Which say to the seers, this is our people, the children of Israel, rebellious Israelites. 2/3, the ones that believe in all this religious type of crap and so forth. Secular churches, worldly churches, because they ain't dealing with the scriptures, is what it's talking about. Which say to the seers, wicked Israelites, same ones you said we read in 1 Maccabees 1:11, in those days went there out wicked of Israel, wicked men. See, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. See? Same wicked people that's dealing in the churches and so forth. These different religions. That's not telling our people the truth. This are our people, rebellious Israelites. Because look what verse 1 says, woe, destruction to the rebellious children, said the Most High, that take counsel, they take counsel, but not of me. They took counsel of who? Antiochus Epiphanes. Trusting in man, right? They take counsel, but not of me. And that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add what? Sin to sin. See? That's us. And that's what we reading about right here in the Greek Empire. What we did. Verse 9, it says that this is rebellious people, lying children, children that will not hear the law of the Most High. That's why I say, that's why they have a problem. You say, we under the law. Just start saying that. Don't say no commandment, say the law. You got to follow the law and see the response you get. Same rebellious people, same rebellious Israelites, then, now, and forever. That this is rebellious people, lying children, children that will not hear the law of the Most High. You see here, he said that everybody should leave their law. That the heathen was okay with it because all the gods of the nations are idols, you know. And many Israelites persuaded many to follow the way of the king and forsake the Most High's laws, as we read it. Verse 49, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances, change all the commandments that the Most High gave us, moral laws, civil laws, dietary laws, ceremonial laws, and sacrificial laws. Verse 10, which say to the seers, see not, don't be looking at us. And to the prophets, prophesy not to us to the right things. They don't hear what it is that I'm bringing forth in the right things that they should know. Speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits, tell us lies. We want to hear smooth words. Get you out of the way, turn aside out of the path, cause the Holy One of Israel, the Most High power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to cease from before us. That's our people. And that's what they're doing, not realizing they blaspheme the Holy Spirit. That's something to go in this world and the world to come. So going back to 1 Maccabees, the first chapter. Verse 51, in the selfsame matter wrote he to his whole kingdom. This is wicked Edomite king, Antiochus Epiphanes. He wrote to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over all the people, over the prophets, over the seers, who we are, and not knowing, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, see, everyone that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land. Remember what it said in verse 9. And after his death, after Alexander the Greek death, they all put crowns upon themselves. That's the 4 generals that he set up over his kingdom, the Greek kingdom, the first so-called white man's kingdom, so that their sons after them many years. What did it say? And evils were multiplied in the earth. We read about them right now. Verse 52. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land. You hear that? That's why there's so much evil in the lands that we scattered in right now, because people are forsaking the law. That's why the Most High told us, man, y'all better understand, overstand. Go to Hosea, 4th chapter, 1st verse. See, we have done things that we're blessed to even be here today. Hear the word of the Most High, Hosea 4:1. Hear the word of the Most High, you children of Israel. For the Most High has the controversy with the inhabitants of the land. We just living in different lands. Why? Because there is no truth. He just got rid of the truth. The truth is the laws of the Most High, is the law. There is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of the Most High in the land. He got rid of the Most High. We know the Most High to doing what he say do. He took the time with his finger to write 613 laws, moral laws, civil laws, dietary laws, ceremonial laws, and sacrificial laws. And we just gonna give him the middle finger. He took his finger and wrote all these, and we gonna give him the middle finger. Y'all know what that means. Over and over again, and you think you ain't gonna be dealt with? That's like, it didn't say in a minute, we gotta follow the law of the land. Which we do. But some laws that's against the Most High's laws, you hope you're not following. But if you are, that's why the Most High said, hey, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of the Most High in the land. Straight up. So, this when evils were multiplied in the earth. Because we knew we were in other captivities. We knew we were the Israelites. Here, look. Verse 52 of 1 Maccabees, the first chapter. Then many of the people was gathered unto them, to wit, every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land. See that? When you forsake the laws of the Most High, you commit evils in the land. That's why this land is all full of evil, because the laws of the Most High is not being projected through the leadership. Verse 53. And drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. So we were running to secret places. This is when we ran into the catacombs. Like the Vatican, they have underground cities that we built to hide from this wicked king and his ordained atrocities that came against us as the Israelites for following the laws of the Most High. When he said, whoever follows the laws of the Most High, he should die. Verse 50, and whosoever would not do according to the commandments of the king, he said he should die. He already said, verse 49, to the end they might forget the law. Are you with me? And change all the ordinances, the way we think, the way we act, the way we speak. So we had to run in the catacombs, underground, running from them. This persecution that was coming upon us. Verse 54, now the 15th day of the month, Caslu, in the 145th year of the Greeks, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, you see, to destroy us. That's why I say you could look at it however you want to. All this is geared toward us. Everything. The 12 tribes of Israel. As it was here, nothing new under the sun. As it is now. And burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces, tore in pieces the books of the law. What's the books of the law? When they had torn in pieces the books of the law, which they found, they burnt them with fire. They burnt the books of the law. And whatsoever was found with any the book of the testament, you had part of the law of Moses, first 5 books of the Bible, in the prophets, whatever writings you had of the Old Testament, and whatsoever was found with any the book of the testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. So you wonder why our people are like they are. So fervent in saying that we're not under the law. Did you follow the law? The king's commandment was to put us to death. Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month. Hear that? Every month we was being put to death, to as many as were found in the cities. Now check this out. Now the 25th day of the month, like Christmas, 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice unto the idol altar, which was upon the altar of the Most High. Sacrificing pigs, and they did a lot of stuff, more so than that even. But they had abominable and unclean beasts. Now the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice unto the idol altar, which was upon the altar of the Most High, at which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. You see, they put to death on the 25th of your Christmas certain women that had their children circumcised, meaning teaching them the truth, teaching them the laws of the Most High. Because the babies were with the women initially from birth to 5 years old. So when they found out that they were teaching them the truth, or they found out that they circumcised the boys on the 8th day, as the law says, they'll put to death on the 25th day of the month. Y'all celebrating Christmas, our ancestors were put to death on your Christmas day. And they having what they call, the Illuminati having humanized sacrifices on that day too. Now the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of the Most High. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. It could just be why they took the Apocrypha out of the Bible, the Protestants. And they hanged their infants about their necks. So when you see these Christmas bulbs on these trees that represent our babies that they hung on these trees, I think I see Target, they have faces on the dang on bulbs. And they hang the infants, that's the babies, about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit, many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean things. You see? We were about it. We weren't just talking about it, we was about it. We weren't going to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore, they chose rather to die. I'll read you again. Rather eat any unclean thing, wherefore they chose rather to die. I'll read it one more time for understanding. Rather eat any unclean thing, as the Most High told you, I gave you the scriptures as far as dealing with the dietary laws in Leviticus 11th chapter and Deuteronomy 14th chapter. Rather eat any unclean thing, wherefore they chose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. And there was great, and let me get it right, and there was very great wrath upon Israel. See that? Very much wrath upon Israel. So now, we're going to go to 1 Maccabees, the 2nd chapter, and we're going to start reading at verse 15. Because when we look at the 2nd chapter, we start reading down from 1 down is when Judas Maccabees, Mattathias, who was Judas Maccabees' father, he had sons that became warriors that's going to fight for us. Well, let's look at 1 Maccabees, 2nd chapter, the 15th verse. It says, and we're going to read the verse 25. It says, in the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city of Modin, to make them sacrifice. So they come into the city of Modin to sacrifice. And when many of the Israelites came unto them, Mattathias also, that's Judas Maccabees and his brother's dad, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. We had a lot of strength. We had sons and brethren, right? Now therefore, come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Bribing them. Do like everybody else is doing. See a bunch of sellouts. Just like it is right now. All they got to do is say, do this, what people do. They do it. Bunch of sheep led to the slaughter. So you're going to be rewarded with gold and silver. Gonna fatten your pockets, man. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him and fall away, every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. The agreement, the contract that the Most High gave to who? The covenant is with who? Because a lot of y'all say the covenant is with anybody that call on the name of Jesus. Who the covenant with? Psalms 105. Let's see who the covenant with. Of our fathers. Let's find who is this covenant is with. Psalms 105 and 8. He who is the Most High, power of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob been the forefather of the 12 tribes of Israel. That's his name forever and immortal to all generations. He, the Most High, have remembered his covenant, his agreement, his contract. How long? Forever. The word which he commanded to 1,000 generations. They said, covenant of our fathers, right? This is the covenant. Which covenant he made with Abraham and his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel, the Israelites, for an everlasting covenant. Hear that? Everlasting covenant. So now, continuing, since we know that covenant was given to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to the 12 tribes of Israel. And you can read that in Jeremiah 31:31 down, and Hebrews 8 and 8 down. Tell you that covenant is with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to the 12 tribes of Israel only. So now, back to 2 Maccabees, the 2nd chapter. After the officer offered Mattathias gold and silver and much reward, he said this, verse 19, Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion, obey him and fall away, every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. We just read about that covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to the 12 tribes of Israel. The Most High forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. We ain't changing one way or another. Now, when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all the sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Here come an Israelite, dang Sambo coming in. He done made a statement. Here come a Sambo. I'll do it. I'm gonna do it, master. I'm a good nigga. I'm gonna do it. Which thing when Mattathias saw, He was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar, ran and killed him right there on the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. He killed the one that was telling him to sacrifice, or do the same thing that everybody else was doing, them heathens was doing. Put him to death and pulled down the altar. Okay, let's jump up to verse 49. Now when the time drew near that Mattathiah should die, he said unto his sons, now have pride and rebuke gotten strength. Talk about during the Edomite kingdom. Pride, he said, now have pride and rebuke gotten strength, in the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law. Hear that? Be zealous for the law. Whose law? The Most High's law. Say, be zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. See? Give your lives for the covenant, the contract, the agreement that we just read about. That was the Most High gave to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to the 12 tribes of Israel. He told them, give their lives for this. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time. So shall you receive great honor and an everlasting name. See? From there, we're going to jump down to verse 66. And for Judas Maccabees, he had been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain and fight the battle of the people. So he chose Judas to fight the battle of the people. Now, First Maccabees, the 3rd chapter, we're going to read verse 45. Now, like I say, you can read from the first book of Maccabees, 1st chapter, 1st verse, all the way to the 4th verse. I'm just skipping over parts of it, but you can read the whole thing to get to your understanding of all that was going on with us during the Greek Empire. So we're looking at 1 Maccabees, the 3rd chapter, verse 45. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and aliens kept the stronghold. Hear that? Aliens was in our temple, kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe with the harp ceased. We didn't have any joy. See? Wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Mizpah over against Jerusalem. For in Mizpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. This is where they came to pray. Then they fasted that day and put on sackcloth and cast ashes upon their heads and rent their clothes. This is a sign of humility. This is what we did. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images, as it is today. Approximately 169 AD. They brought also the priest's garments, and the first fruits, and the tithes, and the Nazarites they stirred up, who had accomplished their days. Then cried they with a loud voice toward heaven, cried to the Most High, fasting and praying and crying to the Most High, saying, what shall we do with these, and whither shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profane, and thy priests are in heaviness and brought low, And lo, the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us, thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O Most High, power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, be our help? Then sounded they with trumpets, and cried with a loud voice. And after this, Judas ordained captains over the people, even captains over thousands, and over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens. But as for such as were building houses, or had betrothed wives, or were planting vineyards, or were fearful, those he commanded that they should return, every man to his own house, according to the law. See, going by the law still. So now let's jump up to Memorial of the Feast of Dedication. Now we're going to start in 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter. First verse. Just the Holy Convocation of Memorial of the Feast of Dedication. Then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen. Like I said, you can read from chapter 1 all the way to here. Then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen and 1,000 of the best horsemen, and removed out of the camp by night, to the end he might rush in upon the camp of the Jews, the Israelites, and smite or kill them suddenly, plotting ambushes. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Judas heard thereof, he himself removed, and the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army, which was at Emas. So him and his men preparing to fight and kill the army, the king's army that was at Emas, while as yet the forces were dispersed from the camp. In the mean season came Gorgias by night into the camp of Judas, and when he found no man there, he sought them in the mountains. He didn't see them there, so he said, they got to be in the mountains. So said he, these fellows flee from us, they running from us. But as soon as it was day, Judas showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. So they wasn't equipped like these Greeks were. And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, and compassed round about with horsemen, and these were expert at war. These men were expert at war, and they had all kind of weapons of war. Then said Judas to the men that were with him, he got 3,000 men, he said, fear. Remember, Gorgias got 5,000. Judas only got 3,000. 2,000 more Gorgias have than Judas and his men. Then said Judas to the men that were with him, fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea. This is what's important, because who delivered them in the Red Sea? The Most High. He let them know, hey, remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea when Pharaoh pursued them with an army? Now therefore let us cry unto heaven. This is important. You've heard it in verse 50 of 1 Maccabees, 3rd chapter. Then cried they with a loud voice toward heaven. What is Judas saying? 1 Maccabees 4 and 10. Now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure, which is perhaps, the Most High will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers that we read about. You read about in Acts 3 and 13, the covenants with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Covenant of our fathers. And destroy this host, this army, before our face this day. So all the heathen may know that there is one who delivered and saveth Israel. You hear that? There's one that delivered and saveth Israel. That's our power. Then the strangers lifted up their eyes and saw them coming over against them. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle. But they that were with Judah sounded their trumpets. So they joined battle. And the heathen, being discomfited, fled into the plain. Howbeit all the hindermost of them were slain with the sword. All of them they ran, but all the ones that was behind were slain with the sword. And they pursued them unto Gazera, and unto the plains of Idumea, and Azotus, and Jamnia, so that there were slain of them upon 3,000 men. They had 3,000, they killed 3,000 men. This done, Judas returned again with his host from pursuing them, and said to the people, be not greedy or the spoils. Don't be taking everything that you can that they have, because usually when you went to war, when you lost, you were able to take whatever you want, or the man that was dead on the ground. Inasmuch as there is a battle before us. So don't be concerned about the spoils, because we still got to fight. We still got a war to contend with. And Gorgias and his hosts are here by us in the mountain. But stand ye now against our enemies and overcome them. And after this, you may boldly take the spoils. So let's kill them, and then you can take the spoils. Once we get this army that Gorgias has to come against us. As Judas was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountain. So he's seen a part of them looking out of the mountains, who when they perceived that the Jews had put their host to flight, had put their army to flight, and were burning the tents, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. They seen, hey, you know, we like to set things on fire. Burn, baby, burn. Burn them up. And they seen this fire. When therefore they perceived these things, they were so afraid, made them afraid. And seeing also the host of Judas in the plain, ready to fight, they fled every one into the land of strangers. Then Judas returned to spoil the tents, where they got much gold and silver and blue silk and purple of the sea and great riches. After this, they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving. So yeah, we did sing songs, mighty men, like David was a mighty warrior. They sung songs of thanksgiving and praised the Most High power in heaven, because it is good, because his mercy endureth forever. Thus Israel had a great deliverance that day. Now all the strangers that had escaped came and told Lysias what had happened, who, when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such things as he would were done unto Israel, nor such things as the king commanded him will come to pass. See, they thinking they're gonna wipe us out, but we wipe them out. The next year, therefore, following, Lysias gathered together 70,000 choice men of foot. A score is 20, so that's 70 is 60,000 choice men of foot. 60,000 men, choice men of foot, and 5,000 horsemen. That's 65,000, that he might subdue them. So they came into Idumea. Idumea is Edom, Rome, representing the Edomites' place of residence, in habitation, and pitched their tents at Bethsira. And Judas met them with 10,000 men, 65,000 against 10,000 men. And when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, Savior of Israel, who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gave it the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and his armor bearer, Shut up this army in the hand of the people of Israel, and let them be confounded, confused in their power and horsemen. Make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the hosts, the army of Lysias, about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. He killed 5,000. Now when Lysias saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judah's soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die violently, he went into Antiochia. See, Antiochia, Epiphanes had a city named after him, Antiochia, and gathered together a company of strangers. He would got other nations. And having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again into Judea. Then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together, and went up into Mount Sion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, they came to see the sanctuary. Remember, we read about it in 1 Maccabees, the first chapter, how they defiled the sanctuary with swine's flesh and all that. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate and the altar profane, man, and the gates burned up, and the scrubs growing in the courts as in the forest, or in one of the mountains, yeah, and the priests' chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentation, crying, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpet, and cried toward heaven, cried to the Most High. The third time we'd have read this. Cried to the Most High. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. He had certain men to go and fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. That'd be some kind of work, boy. Because it was just totally defiled. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law. You keep hearing this over and over again. Pleasure in the law, the law, the law, the law, the law. They're the Most High's laws, who cleanse the sanctuary and bear out the defiled stones into an unclean place, right? Now, what's cold is, look also, I want to bring something in. This is when we're going to start to cleanse the sanctuary. I want you to take the time to go to 2 Maccabees, the 6th chapter. And we'll start at verse 1. It says, now long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of the Most High. So we can't get no clearer than this. He sent an old man to have us not follow the laws of the Most High power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter, see, Olympius, and that in Gerizim of Jupiter, the defender of strangers. Remember all the gods of the nations are idols? Here they are right here. As they did desire that dwelt in the place. You see, that's what they were dealing with, idolatry. the coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people. Him coming in of this mischief, having us not follow the law, statutes, commandments of the Most High, was grievous to the Israelites. Listen, for the temple was filled with riot. Were they cleaning up now? He said the temple was filled with riot and revelings by the Gentiles, by these other nations. Start with the Edomites and on down. Who, listen what they did in there, who dallied with harlots, prostitutes in the temple, who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places. Women in there selling their bodies and having sex in the temple. Not only swine's flesh, but they doing this too. Who dallied with harlots, those are prostitutes, and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that brought in things that were not lawful, unclean beasts and so forth, as we read about in 1 Maccabees, the first chapter. Listen, the altar also was filled with profane things, which the law forbidden, right? This is what I want you to see here. Because as I told you, in Malachi, the last prophet of the Old Testament, Malachi is in the Persian Mede Empire. And that's why we had to go to the Apocrypha in 1 Maccabees, the first chapter, to see that Alexander the Greek took down the Persian Mede Empire, right? So now, that's what that blank page on the back of Malachi, or the next page, then it says the New Testament. But when you get there, you're in the Roman Empire. So this is where we're looking at, that we're reading about tonight, or today, is the Greek Empire, you see? That's missing from the revived King James 611 Bible. But we're hearing it now. So listen to what happened to us as the Israelites. 2 Maccabees 6:6. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. So now you got all these years of our people is against the law for them to confess themselves to be an Israelite. So they became Gentile, just like a lot of y'all out there. Like I said, I got 104 different identities of who you are as a race, your nationality. You see, that's lost, man. That's destroyed for lack of knowledge. For real, for real. So it was against the law for you to call yourself an Israelite. So by the time you come to Mashiach Yahushua in the Roman Empire, you had all these years of our people calling themselves Greeks, calling themselves Romans, calling themselves Gentiles. That's why you see in the New Testament they'll say to the Jew and to the Greek. These are the Israelites. Let's call themselves Greeks. Look at they call it, or Hellenized, called Greek. That means Greek-speaking Jews. Took up the customs of the Edomites, or the Gentiles and so forth. And just what you're looking at. What happened? Once again, it says, neither was it lawful, this 2 Maccabees 6:6, neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. See? That's why you see to the Jew and to the Gentile, to the Jew and to the Greek, and so forth. Because those are Israelites that were calling themselves by these other names, like Corinthians, Ephesians, Galatians, and so forth, Thessalonians, call themselves by the lands that they lived in, instead of Israelites. Listen at this, verse 7. For all you that want to follow birthdays, it says, in the day of the king's birth, that's his birthday, every month, they were brought by bitter constraint. See, we ain't want to do this, because we ain't celebrate no birthdays. By bitter constraint, to eat of the sacrifices. And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in possession to Bacchus, carrying ivy. Moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy, one of the 4 generals that Alexander set over his 4 different realms of his kingdom against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices. And whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. You hear this? Then might a man have seen the present misery. But there were 2 women brought who had circumcised their children. Remember, he said, if you circumcise your children, you put to death on the 5 and 20th day of the month. Like you're going to celebrate Christmas, and them bulbs took the babies' heads and put them on them trees. Like y'all have them bulbs on your trees, which is abomination. Read Jeremiah, the 10th chapter, verse 1 to 5. Talks about them Christmas trees. Moreover, then went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of the Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices. And whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the misery, the present misery that was upon us, the children of Israel. But there went out 2 women brought. But there were 2 women brought, who had circumcised their children, whom when they had openly led around about the city, the babes hanging at their breasts, they tied their babies to their breasts. They cast them down headlong from the wall, drug them around in the city with their babies tied to their breasts, and they threw them headlong from a wall. And others that had run together into caves nearby to keep the Sabbath day secretly, they trying to keep the Sabbath day secretly without them knowing it, being discovered to Philip, were all burnt together. They burned them alive because they made a conscience to help themselves for the honor of the most sacred day. So you keep on reading down, you're gonna read about Eleazar, the old man that refused to eat pork or anything abominable, and the woman and her 7 sons. Keep reading, you'll learn a lot about the Greek Empire. Now, going back to 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter, and let's start at verse 52. So you see, there was cleanup. Well, we can go back to the point of view when they started to clean up the temple. Verse 43: who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the foul stones into an unclean place. And when as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings that was defiled with all abominable things that they had sacrificed on it, and also they was having sex in there too, in the temple too, which was profane, they thought it best to pull it down. Hey, look at this,